Hello, everybody. In the purpose of sharing the meaning of some kind of gift that I am going to send to my daughter in her wedding celebration, I am going to translate for you a chapter of a text that I have written. I am Fernando Baena from Colombia, and I am going to read you a chapter of my book. Um, so I'm going to share with you the what I think in my novel El Despertar del Colibri, the waking up of the bird colibri, uh, by that I have written some years ago. In order to give you a kind of meaning about the meaning of the act of weaving among the indigenous people of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in the beautiful country of Colombia, South America. This is an special attention that I'm giving today to Shalila and Darby in the year 2023. Here we go. I'm gonna share with you that right now. This is the chapter number 2, and the Mamo Kogi, he is a kind of shaman in these beautiful mountains of Colombia, in the north of Colombia. He is speaking about his own life in front of some people. They are talking together, and he is explaining about his life. And they tell him, his name is Mamo Elias. They tell him, please, Mamo Elias, tell us about your life and how you met us. And he says this in this chapter. Let us first of all salute the 9 points: the east, the west, the south, the north, the father sun at the zenith, the mother earth at the nadir, and the three secret directions. I should speak only on behalf of them who are my guardians and yours. I would prefer to keep quiet, but I know that between all of us we are going to weave the memories of what some of you might call an experiment. That word sounds like science to me. It sounds more like spinning to me. That we have come to do is an attempt to produce a cotton blanket to cover us all. You know, to live is to spend time tying knots. Weaving is how we dream words. That is why the Ikus say that the first mammoths that existed, Nakwa and Kaku Serankwa, formed the cosmos by spinning themselves all over the place until they reached the highest snowy peak of the Sierra Nevada, from where the ideas that had to be threaded to protect the world so that there would be balance emerged. We are all of us, not only the older brothers and sisters, who we call ourselves the people, but also other people, the Wayu, the Kuna, the Embera, the Guambiano, to name a few, and the little brothers of all races too, all over America and Asia and Europe and Australia and Africa, and the whites, and the Inga and the Macuna and the Cubeo, for example, to speak only of Colombia. We are all the little yarns that we started to weave in the center of the universe, where the souls of those who die rest. Let us invoke them all. If I had been a pure native or a typical Mamo, I would not be telling that the dress we are making for the world has to be composed of cotton strands brought from all over. I would prefer in that case that the only material used came from the Sierra. the Mamus who taught the elders who were my teachers. They would have been very angry just hearing that thought. I am different. We already know that. I am the son of a mulatto woman from Cartagena, a sociologist who came as a student to collect information in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta for research. She was doing her thesis. My father is Kogi, a mixture of families because his mother was from the Wintuqua, which the Spanish conquerors called Arhuacos. He had customs from various parts. My paternal grandfather was a full Kogi. When my taita saw my mother, he immediately began to explain to her that if one of us wants to look for a woman he likes, then he lets her know by telling her that he wants her to knit him a mochila, a backpack. The knapsack in the woman's womb, which you call the uterus, and so to knit it is to offer the man a place for his child. My mother, instead of undertaking the task she had been given at the university, was so enamored that she began to weave him a bag called Cheguiequequanu, the one that men used to keep their personal belongings, which was not pretty because she had not been taught well since she was a child, like any other woman in my village. But my dad didn't care about that. He didn't think she wouldn't love it well. Between us, we know that if you're knit pretty, you know also, for that same reason, to make your love vows. But this was another matter because she was not a woman of tradition. She had not been taught that relationships are achieved and maintained by putting the fibers together well, and that this is also done by weaving beautifully. My dad also foresaw that he would have difficulty explaining to my paternal grandparents that he was marrying a woman who did not believe that the universe was an egg with nine levels. The two of them were not compatible for the ancient mammoths because, according to custom, a man belongs to a group called Tux, which is a lineage that comes from his father and grandfather. My mother and grandmother, however, were not of acceptable female lineage because they were not from the Sierra. So, according to the saying, they do not have dake. The belief is that a jaguar does not eat snake because it gets indigestion, and in the understanding is that sleeping with a woman is similar to eating meat. The word kogi means jaguar. So my dad was not doing the right thing because just as animals get sick if they eat the wrong food, a tuxe does not eat anything but daik. And then I, for example, could be a son who could bring misfortune, but that was a belief that did not matter to them. To avoid family rejection, my taita proposed to my mother that they go to live with a mixed community, the hippie Kogis of 1970s style couples, in which one of the spouses, man or woman, had come from some Colombian city or from somewhere in the world, motivated to learn our cosmology and live apart. They were people who didn't want to listen to rock or smoke marijuana, but who also didn't want to stay in cities or wear a tie to earn money. We were a different family. We were located at the northeastern slope of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, between the basins of Buritaca, Don Diego, and Palomino rivers. My farm was on the left arm, that is, on that side of the river. We manufactured panela, sugarcane, and had machete agriculture. In my little school, 70 kilometers from Santa Marta, my classmates were children of French fathers and Kogi mothers, or English mothers and indigenous fathers, for example. I learned the basics of English from my little friends. The teachers taught us to protect our settlements from the settlers who tried to invade our resguardo by having us play at building a pueblo talanquera. My mother taught me Spanish. My father showed me that was in the world and what it meant to be an inhabitant of the Sierra. He taught me how it should be taught by helping me acquire the skills of weaving. I remember him talking to me about marriage. If you want to know how to create, you have to know how to weave. Because for us, if one does not make ties, if one is not linked to others, one is not in tune with the law of origin. You are what you make of for others, and that depends on how the soul of the artisan remains in the wave. The human fibers must be well crossed, and one must concentrate in order not to lose sight of the figure one is achieving. I was taught the roles of the eco men making designs that we call kunsumunu cherwa, which have to be very well traced. You call it a metaphor when you say, believe it or not, that one thing is like another. But for us, it's not a comparison between the art of weaving and life, but a fact. One thing is the other, and it's as it happens in dreams. We have never seen that a woman of ours is different from how she looks. For example, the embroidery on the ends of a nightgown. So I strive to be a great weaver, but not because I had in my mind to prepare myself for when I had a partner, a wife. I didn't think about that. When a man has gotten cotton for the woman he likes, and she has screamed, made the rolls and spun with use, the man weaves on the loom, with patience and with devotion a dress. And that makes him a good husband. He must have learned to do it well, but I was not trained for that. My father was teaching me a deeper sense still. He had learned not only with the Koguis knowledge, but with the Ikka sayings, because my grandfather had been from the south of the Sierra. He evaluated me every day when I showed him that I had achieved, for example, when producing the cap. There are already stars and rivers. There are already white mountains. That I meant that meant I was seeing the Sierra Nevada in the fabric. A good fabric is like the lines on the palm of the hand for Lucrezia. Lucrezia is another character of the novel. It reveals what is on the other side. If the yarn had stars, it meant that it was coming to life, that one had been able to put love into it, that one had been producing without anxiety, weaving beautifully, advised as one should by animals and plants. That was progress. And they didn't teach it to me at school because it was better that the person who loved you the most took care of it. Of my little school, I remember that I lived admiring its palm roof, its walls of Guayacana and Caña Brava. I would fall asleep from my desk, my head thrown back instead of looking at the boat. But I did not spend as much time there as my classmates, because a friend of my father's, who was called Mamo Pedro, took me out of the classroom a lot to teach me ceremonial language and other knowledge. I would go with him to learn the properties of the stones and accompany him to baptism ceremonies. He was looking for a boy to serve as an ambassador to to the younger brothers, those who don't live in the sacred territory. That is why he wanted to go to my ranch to share a word with my family, to ask them about me. Although my blood is mixed, he had dreamed about me. He wanted to know what my weavings were like. They brought him a wool tutusoma, the man's cap, a ginu, the girdle with which the pants are fastened, and there was a twinkle in his eyes when he touched a sihu that I had just finished. You know, that small and flexible backpack where the coca leaves are kept. Then he carefully checked the stains of on my arms. He said I might have the character. That meant I was being selected for the Mamo and they were going to test me. I looked like a good seed to them. Uh, a Mamo, you know, a shaman. A Mamo is a shaman. I was only 7 years old. Mamo Pedro would go for walks with me and show me snakes, birds, spiders, quadrupeds. And then at night, when he would lay at the hammocks and make fire, he would ask me to fall asleep and dream about the tapir, the jaguar, the moor deer, the otter, the pauhil, whether he had seen them or not, because some of them already seemed to be extinct. My task was to discover the fabric with which they were made. I did it. I would see, for example, the spirits of the redfish who teamed up to hunt prey, or the squirrels guarding seeds, or the condors surveying their territory across the continent. Others play, exhibited feathers, crawled, camouflaged themselves with the manigua, made of textures that shone according to their temperaments and changed like mandalas in a kaleidoscope. They moved, multiplied, and died, got sick and recovered. It seemed as if they were all together making a spider's web of light. Sometimes they noticed my presence. They looked like shoals, hares. They always went in groups and they did not always like that I was spying on them. At sunrise, Mamo Pedro would ask me to tell him my dreams in detail. He would scold me if I had forgotten them. He would take me to Nabusimaki for if for 15 days in a row I managed to remember them. I loved going there to the capital of the Arhuacos, the place where the sun rises. He would tell me about the ancestors, the Jaguar men. He would show me their tombs, the ruins of the settlements, and he would put me to sleep. When I thought I was ready, my mentor made me take the second step, dreaming about knitting people. I started with the older brothers. I was happy to meet them. The grandparents of other countries told me stories and told me that with them I was receiving cotton to weave my great work, a camisole that would dress not only the body of the Sierra Nevada but all the lands. It would protect the world from restless spirits, and brotherhood among all things would be possible. But when I had to take the third step, I was a nightmare. Mamo asked me one night after making payments to Mother Earth to dream the loom of the younger brothers. We had offered in ceremony fruits, cotton, candles, and aromas to the little mother who feed us. That is why I expected good visions. But I did not dream that I was flying, but that I was being sucked by a gray weight like cement. The first thing I noticed was that the poles were almost all broken. A loom is a square that also has four sticks that join the corners, but these were not intercepted in the center, forming an X, as it should be for there to be telepathy between the grandparents of centuries ago and the living. They were rectly slanted to one side. The world of other lands was not in balance, and so they tried, but could not make their clothes well. Hence the wars, the injustice. I felt how unhappy they were. They did not spin their thoughts as they should, and so there was inequality. I cried when I saw them. Instead of light games and voices, there was wailing. There were no chiefs, but lonely beings. They only thought they were doing good things, which they called progress, but in reality they were destroying everything. The akunkuna or loom, if I may review, has 8 sticks. Some are female and some are male. And so the law of origin is fulfilled and everything comes out beautifully. The kumuya, which is round and holds the ends of both sides of the thread, is in charge of the harmony between women and men. But this kumuya of the younger brothers was rotten. When I woke up and told my dream to Mamo Pedro, he told me, "You see, we need to teach them to weave and first of all fix their loom. They have acquired the power to do whatever they want with the land, but they don't know responsibility. They do not with good intentions. They do not think with true thought. They do not know that everything is a luna. But since they do not know and cannot learn, we have to ask for help from other peoples who have memory. We have to make a blanket together, and someone has to go to visit them, to put them in agreement to weave it all at the same time. Then Mamo Pedro sought the conversation with my mom and dad. He explained that I was ready and asked their permission. He told them that when some time ago the Mamos had seen that there was no longer snow on top of the mountains or enough waters in the rivers, they had seen that something was going wrong, and in assembly they had decided to send messengers to warn the younger brothers. The younger brothers is how they call the Koguis to everyone else that are not living in the Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta around the world. It had done some good, but they needed me to deliver the message with a louder voice because the exiled people of the Sierra Nevada seemed deaf. My father did not understand why I should help them, if the legend says that it was they themselves who long ago decided to leave the center of the world where we are, knowing that these were not lands where they could follow the law of origin. Mamo explained to them that, on the one hand, if they did not collaborate with the balance, it could not be achieved, and that on the other hand, although they were brothers who separated, they were in a case family. It did not matter if they lived in Eastern or Western countries. And when I was 9 years old, they began to take me to a circle of stones with a fire in the center, where for 2 more years they prepared me to fast, to endure loneliness, to know how to use the healing herbs, and above all, to trust the darkness. Then my mentors decided to prepare me for ceremony and summoning. A whole line of people climbed the mountain with me beyond Machete Pelao on the way to the entrance of Tuteyuna, the lost city of the Tairona people. We headed for the foot of the glacier very high up, but they were not going to lock me in a hunt until I was 18 years old to give me instruction, like the other children educated to be mamos. Nor would they teach me to be an assistant mamo, nor a commissary, but a ceremonial mamo. All the men and women of wisdom in the Sierra attended, not only those from my community, but also Arhuacos, Canquamas, and Wiwas. They revealed to me my sacred name, which I cannot pronounce. They gave me the symbols, the condor, the jaguar carved in stone, and the blindfold. Then I said goodbye to my mother, trying not to cry. It was the last time she could treat me as her son, because from now on I would be for her and for everyone a guardian of the world. My school friends hugged me, some with envy, others with sorrow. Then we caravanned off to the 3 year incubation in the stone circle. It's not just a circle, they make of wall. Over the first row of river stones, another one is built with clay and mortar and more stones to close upwards with smaller and smaller circles that slowly form a domed roof. One stays inside in prayer, communicating with Mother Earth and Father Sky in silence. One sings to the dream. There was the ancient dance, which few remembered anymore, in which the Hukumeji men wore their jaguars' masks, with long fangs covered in gold leaf, open mouth, and protruding tongue. The dancers, who knew the memory to become a feline one, growled and pawed like the beast, shoving a blue ball into their mouths. They said it would protect me from the greedy jaguars that rape virgin girls, and I would become a protective jaguar like any of the ancestors. I did not understand that very well, but because it was a remote custom, but it was explained to me by those who had ancient memory that to prevent the jaguars from coming and eating the world at the end of time, to prevent everything from ending, one must first become a jaguar, stand guard, lie in wait, scare them, and make them flee so that the world keeps rolling. One also invokes the spirit of hummingbird that comes flying over a rainbow, as in the Mayan legend. Remember, my novel is called the Waking Up of the Hummingbird. When the hummingbird releases nectar, it does not move. It remains very still. However, it flaps its wings very fast. It vibrates so high that its wings become transparent. One is there for the same thing to happen to it. The light is increasingly scarce during the 9 days the mentors take to surround you with sacred chants and fire dances, the song of the flutes and the talk of the exploits of the first elder brothers who had to seek refuge in South America 14,000 years ago, when their great island, which I believe was Atlantis, sank. One remembers that the universe is like two pyramids joined at the base with nine worlds, the fifth of which is ours. At night, surrounding this stone dome, the prophecies that were made are told again, while one also says goodbye to the stars. On the other side of the wall, you can barely hear the voices of the palabreros. You know that you are going to die. You ask the higher worlds of light not to take you to any of the four worlds of darkness below the one you inhabit. When the dome is closed with the last pebble, a special white one brought from the upper reaches of the waterfalls, you understand that 3 years down the road, when you are released from confinement, you will not longer be called by your old name or remembered as the child you were. From then until death, one is a mammal. You feel a great emotion that is not fear but resembles it. It is courage that has a secret name in Tegua, the ceremonial language, but which translated means heavenly courage. You suffer, yet you are the happiest human being on earth. You are giving your life to the guardians of the world. Little by little, the chinks through which the sun enters, which are pin-sized holes that you clink in the hope that they will not be discovered, are closing, but they disappear. Although they have already placed the white stone at the top, one hears that they continue to cover them with more mortar and stone, not so that there will be no more chinks of light, but because they don't even want the voices of the crickets to be heard. And now it is up to you to start weaving. It is hard work. I need the guineo, the yucca. You have to start working with your fears, everything that makes you sick from fear. In order to circulate air, a circuit is made with two tubes. The first is a twisted tube that penetrates through the floor. The other is a cane on the back, oblique, through which one is supplied, as not, so as not to die of hunger, with rolling balls of toasted and ground seeds stuck with dry honey. In Tibet, the Sherpas use an identical food called sampa. This duct also serves as an exhaust to the hot air and is placed in such a way to prevent light or sound from entering. From underground, at one, at one end of the enclosure, clean water can be sucked through a channel of fired ceramic. On the opposite side, there is a hole leading to a kind of very deep septic tank into which the waste goes. That's about it. You don't know if anyone could help you if you got sick or went crazy. For 3 years. The first few days I still resisted. Not that I wanted to leave, not that I was complaining about being chosen. On the contrary, I felt lucky. But it was sad to think that I could not play in the San Miguel River like all my friends, that I could not go whenever I wanted to my mother's house to sleep lying on her breasts, and that the fortune of seeing the sun had been taken away from me. Weeks went by. I would get suffocating boredom and shuddering sleep. During the day, the heat seemed to cook everything in sight, and the air coming in through the tube was not enough, or the hot air exit hole was not enough. At night, the temperature was cool, But I prefer to remain naked because puffs of fire with smell of salt pepper could arrive suddenly. Sometimes an insect would visit me, and instead of fright of repulsion, I would welcome it as a guest. First, I would recognize if it was an explorer ant, a lost butterfly strained through the aeration tubes, or a cockatoo emerged from the earth, taking note of the sensations produced by the legs, the wings on my skin, thirsty for affection. Then I would let them do whatever they wanted with me, suck my blood, bite me, or use me for their amusement as a rodent. It didn't matter if it was a spider coming to lay its eggs inside my skin or a stray bee. Company is company. I slept, ate, drank, urinated, and excreted. Invaded by consistent stupor, I talked to my winged visitors. My stunned womb alternately warmed or cooled with day and night. This allowed me to measure time. The same thing would happen to anyone after a few months of being nobody. One forgets oneself. That's why they bury you alive, so that you die, especially if you are a child, because you don't have to carry a bundle of memories. There are no women to long for, no enemies to forgive, no children to worry about. Then the hackneyed verbal really happens. From the egg hatches the larva that weaves itself a silk cocoon that it then tears to emerge as a butterfly. And that is why the first year is just an appetizer. The following year is what counts. It is when one enters one's own health. You don't talk about what happens if you to you in the second year. It is forbidden, although some anthropologists insisted that I tell them about it to enrich their collection of useless words. I never told them. It is not out of selfishness. They simply won't understand it. The process has been entrusted exclusively to the mammals. For the younger siblings, it would be a myth, a nice story. That's what they call what they don't know. They have not lived it. Although you already know, the matter has to do with the magic of the heart. Of course, in this case, since we remember the whole story and it is about you, perhaps I will make an exception, going over it little by little. To talk about the third year, I am less modest. One is back. Everything has already happened. You don't think you were going to make it, and yet you are back in your body, noticing that you have grown. You have very long fingernails, your hair reaches your shoulders, and you begin a very slow, long process to adapt to the light again. From outside, they have been taking care of you all the time without letting you know, and with great skill, they begin to plan your return. There are chants and ceremonies, even if you don't hear them, but you don't know that the mammoths they sponsor are just a few steps away from the cell walls. Happy to know that there is one more of them on Earth. Now one has the vision. Isn't that a nice contradiction? 3 years of darkness make one see, and on the other hand, those who have opened their eyes since birth have not seen the fabric. The five senses are friends of the mind and the brain. They serve to follow instructions, to believe that everything can be solved with recipes. With the bad advice of sight, one ends up convinced that there is no mystery. That is the trap. One falls into it. One uses logic. For the sample bottom, the sciences and devices of the little brother, the one who has no memory. Threats that finally betray us. But there is another way, which is the way of the grandparents. They did not lose their traces. They still hear the voices of the ancestors. And already in the third year, one has floated among satellites and heard the blue echoes of this island, Aluna, Mother Earth. It doesn't matter much to tell what happened next. They made a thin light hole for me to get used to using my eyes, and they widened it so gradually that I didn't know when, and it was time to come out. But as I said, my case was exceptional. The usual thing was to pick a child and raise him in a hut without light for 9 years. But I had been given only 3 years, starting at 11. From the age of 14 to 18, I was sent to a school in Santa Marta where they spoke French, so that I would be unstuck in my studies and learn a third language. They were in a hurry to send me to study in Bogota, and when I finished high school, Mamo Pedro told me that he would send me to university, not only because the government was giving scholarships or simply because I was an outstanding student, but above all so that I could get to know the world. You will no longer be a mamo for the Koguis only. We are going to give you luck so that you will travel a lot by plane, so that you will go far away to meet people who do not know how to weave thoughts. And for what? I replied. There is nothing to learn from younger siblings. Maybe to teach them the way things are going, they are going to fuck the world. This is how it ends this chapter in my text that I wanted to share with you all, and especially with my daughter Chalina, and with Darby. They are um, going to have a ceremony of marriage very soon, so I wanted them to hear these reflections about a gift that I am giving them. And now I want to show you the text in the paper in print. This is the text. It is not still translated or published in English, but in Spanish. And I thank you all for this opportunity to share my perception about how the Koguis think about the universe as a threat and about the good relationships between human beings as a kind of threat. So, thank you very much to you all. My email tu meditación dot, tu meditación in Gmail. Tu meditación, write it TUMEDITACI, I guess. Thank you.